He's the billionaire every woman wants. She's the stepsister society says he can't have. When Alaric Vaughn stood in that darkened office and finally confessed the truth he'd buried for years, everything changed. But this isn't a story about forbidden love winning easily. This is about power, secrets, and a woman who refused to be saved. When scandalous photos leak and the world turns against them, Naevia makes a choice no one expects. She walks away first. Not because she doesn't love him, but because she loves herself more. Watch as a billionaire learns that some women can't be bought, controlled, or rescued, and that real love means letting go of everything you thought defined you. If you believe in choosing yourself first, even when it costs everything, this story will shake you. Subscribe now and stay until the end to see how this ends. The blackout hit Manhattan at exactly 9:47 on a Tuesday night. Alaric Vaughn stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the 42nd floor, watching the city below flicker and die in sections, darkness spreading like spilled ink across the grid. The backup generators kicked in immediately, bathing his office in dim emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the marble floor. He wasn't alone. Naevia Brooks sat across the room at the conference table, her laptop screen the only other source of light, illuminating her face in harsh blue-white tones. She hadn't looked up when the power died, hadn't flinched, just kept typing with that focused intensity that made Alaric's chest ache in ways he refused to examine too closely. They'd been working for 6 hours straight, reviewing the terms of Richard Vaughn's will, the clause that bound them together whether they wanted it or not. The clause that gave Naevia power over Alaric's empire if he ever exploited her in any way. The clause his dead father had designed as some kind of twisted test neither of them had asked for. "Elevators are out," Alaric said, breaking the silence. "We're stuck here until power restoration." Naevia finally looked up. Her dark eyes met his across the room, and for a moment, something flickered there that made his breath catch. Then she looked away, closing her laptop with deliberate care. How long? Could be hours. Could be morning. Of course. She stood, moving to the windows, maintaining careful distance between them. She always did that. Always kept space. Always stayed just out of reach. Does this happen often? No. Alaric moved closer despite himself, drawn to her like gravity. "Naevia, we need to talk. We've been talking for 6 hours. Not about the will. Not about the company. About us." She went very still, her reflection in the dark glass showing an expression he couldn't quite read. "There is no us, Alaric. There's a legal arrangement forced on both of us by your father. That's all." "That's a lie." "Excuse me." He closed the distance between them, stopping just close enough to see the way her breathing changed, the way her hands tightened on the window ledge. "You're lying. To me. To yourself. We both are, and I'm tired of it." Naevia turned to face him fully, chin lifted in that defiant way she had, the way that made her look simultaneously vulnerable and unbreakable. "What exactly do you think you know about what I'm feeling? I know that you avoid being alone with me. I know that you took an apartment across the city instead of staying in the estate, even though the will requires proximity for the next 6 months. I know that when I walk into a room, you find a reason to leave within 10 minutes. I know that you feel this too, whatever this is, and it terrifies you as much as it terrifies me. You don't know anything about me." But her voice wavered slightly, and Alaric caught it. "Don't I? I know that you were 14 when your mother married my father. I know that you spent 4 years in that house feeling like an intruder, while Corliss spent every dinner bragging about the Vaughn name like she'd earned it through anything other than calculated seduction. I know that you left for college and never came back except for holidays you couldn't avoid. I know that you built an entire life in nonprofit work deliberately far from anything that could connect you to Vaughn money because you'd rather struggle than accept help from a world that never wanted you." Naevia's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "And what does any of that have to do with whatever you think is happening between us?" "Everything. Because I know what it's like to be the heir everyone wants a piece of, but nobody actually knows. I know what it's like to be judged before you speak, to have every relationship analyzed for ulterior motives, to wonder if anyone would give a damn about you if you lost everything tomorrow. You're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen past the name, the money, the empire. And I think I'm the only person who's ever seen you as more than Corliss Brooks' daughter or Richard Vaughn's stepdaughter. Stop. Naevia's voice broke slightly. You need to stop talking right now. Why? Because this can't happen. Because the world already thinks the worst of us. And if we... She stopped, shaking her head. The headlines, Alaric. They already whisper. Your father put that clause in the will because he suspected exactly this. Because he knew that people would assume, would judge, would reduce whatever we might feel to something dirty and wrong. I don't care what people think. Well, I do. The words exploded from her, raw and honest. I care because I've spent my entire life being judged for things I didn't choose. For having a mother who married for money. For living in a house where I was tolerated but never welcomed. For being black in spaces that make it very clear I'm only acceptable because of my proximity to Vaughn wealth. I will not give them ammunition to tear me apart for falling for my stepbrother. The last two words hung in the air between them like a confession. Alaric's heart hammered. So you admit it. You're falling for me. Naevia closed her eyes, one tear escaping down her cheek. It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters. No, Alaric. What matters is that I survive this 6 months, fulfill whatever insane requirement your father put in that will, and get out with my dignity intact. What matters is that I don't become another woman destroyed by wanting something she can't have. Who says you can't have it? She opened her eyes, and the look she gave him was devastating in its honesty. Society, the media, the board of directors who already question whether you're fit to run the company your father built. Your mother's memory, which you still honor even though she's been dead for 15 years. My mother, who would exploit this in a heartbeat if she thought it would give her more access to Vaughn money. Every single person who has ever looked at us and seen a scandal waiting to happen instead of two people who might actually understand each other. Alaric reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Her skin was warm against his palm, her fingers trembling slightly. I've spent 32 years doing what everyone expected, he said quietly. Being the perfect heir, the controlled businessman, the man who never lets emotion compromise decision-making. I've dated women my father approved of, made deals that expanded the empire, lived every day under the weight of expectations I never asked for. And I'm so damn tired, Naevia. I'm tired of performing. I'm tired of being alone in rooms full of people. I'm tired of pretending that I don't feel something when you're near that I've never felt with anyone else. What are you saying? I'm saying that I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's love or loneliness or just two damaged people recognizing each other's scars. But I know that I think about you constantly. I know that every woman I've tried to date in the last 3 years has disappointed me because she wasn't you. I know that when you walked into my father's funeral late and unwanted, you were the only person there I wanted to talk to. And I know that if I don't say this now, in this moment, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Naevia was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face even as she tried to maintain composure. You're asking me to risk everything. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we don't have to live our entire lives avoiding what we want because other people won't understand it. And if it destroys us both, then at least we'll know we tried. She pulled her hand away, turning back to the window, her shoulders shaking slightly. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant wail of sirens from the streets below, emergency vehicles responding to the blackout. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. When I was 16, there was a boy at school, Marcus Chun. Smart, funny kind. He asked me to homecoming, and I said yes. When Corliss found out, you know what she said? Alaric waited, something cold settling in his stomach. She said, Naevia, you need to understand something. You're a Brooks now, almost a Vaughn. You don't date boys like Marcus Chun who will work middle-class jobs and live middle-class lives. You date boys who can advance your position, who can give you the life I've secured for us. I was 16 years old, and my own mother told me my worth was tied to how much money I could access through relationships. Naevia, I'm not finished. She turned back to face him, and her expression was fierce. I told her no. I went to homecoming with Marcus, and it was wonderful. And then Corliss made sure Richard knew, and Richard had a quiet conversation with Marcus's father about some business deal that would suffer if complications arose. Marcus stopped calling. He avoided me in the hallways. He graduated and moved across the country, and I never heard from him again. That's what it means to be connected to Vaughn power, Alaric. People get hurt. People I care about get used as leverage or removed as obstacles. My father is dead. He can't control anything anymore. No, but the world he built still exists. The systems, the expectations, the people who benefit from maintaining those structures. And I will not be the weapon someone uses against you. And I will not watch you be destroyed because you made the mistake of wanting someone the world says you shouldn't have. Alaric felt something crack open inside his chest, something raw and desperate. So that's it. We just ignore this. Pretend we feel nothing. We survive. Naevia wiped her tears away with the back of her hand, composure sliding back into place like armor. We complete the terms of the will. We maintain professional distance. And in 6 months, I walk away and build the life I want far from here, and you run your empire with whatever perfectly appropriate partner the board approves of. I don't want anyone else. You don't have a choice, Alaric. Neither of us do. The lights flickered back on suddenly, flooding the office with harsh fluorescent brightness after hours of darkness. Both of them flinched, the spell broken. Naevia grabbed her laptop and bag, moving toward the door with swift efficiency. The elevators should be working soon. I'll finish reviewing the contracts from home and send you my notes tomorrow. Naevia, wait. She stopped at the door but didn't turn around. Please don't make this harder than it already is. I'm asking you, as someone who actually cares about you, to let this go. Then she was gone, and Alaric was alone in his office with the confession hanging in the air like smoke. He stood there for a long time, watching the city come back to life through the windows, lights blooming across the grid in scattered patterns. Somewhere in that vast sprawl of humanity, Naevia was probably in a cab heading home, putting distance between them like she always did. His phone buzzed. A text from Lindenhale, his COO and closest thing he had to a friend in the corporate world. Power back? Board wants to meet tomorrow at 8. They're getting anxious about the will situation. Alaric didn't respond. He was thinking about Marcus Chun, about a 16-year-old girl's homecoming date destroyed by Richard Vaughn's casual cruelty. He was thinking about all the ways his father had controlled people through money and influence, treating human beings like chess pieces in a game only he understood. He was thinking about the woman who'd just walked out of his office, and the choice she'd made to protect them both by refusing what they wanted. And he was thinking that maybe, for the first time in his life, he needed to figure out what mattered more, the empire he'd inherited, or the only person who'd ever made him feel like something other than a name and a bank account. The next morning, Alaric arrived at the office to find his assistant, Patricia, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Mr. Vaughn, there's a situation. He paused in the doorway. What kind of situation? Social media? The gossip sites. Someone photographed you and Ms. Brooks working late last night before the blackout. The angle makes it look intimate. And now people are connecting it to your father's will. And there are questions about why she's suddenly so involved with company business. Cold dread settled in Alaric's stomach. Show me. The photos were grainy, telephoto lens shots from a building across the street, but they were clear enough. Naevia at the conference table, Alaric standing close, the body language readable even without context. The headlines were exactly what he'd feared. Forbidden romance. Billionaire heir gets cozy with stepsister. Vaughn empire scandal. Is this why she's really in the will? Sources question ethics of Alaric Vaughn's relationship with father's stepdaughter. Alaric felt rage building, cold and controlled. Find out who sold these photos. I want to know where they came from. Sir, there's more. Your stepmother called. 3 times. She wants to meet with you immediately. Of course she did. Corliss Brooks had probably seen the photos before anyone and was already calculating how to use them to her advantage. Tell her I'll meet her for lunch. Somewhere public. If they were going to have this conversation, he wanted witnesses. The restaurant was one of those expensive midtown places where Manhattan's elite came to be seen. All white tablecloths and crystal stemware, and carefully maintained discretion. Corliss was already seated when Alaric arrived, dressed in designer everything. Her makeup perfect, her expression carefully concerned. Alaric, darling. Thank you for meeting me on such short notice. She air-kissed both his cheeks, a performance for the other diners watching. I'm so worried about these terrible rumors. He sat across from her, declining the wine she'd already ordered. Let's not pretend you're worried, Corliss. What do you want? Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened slightly. I want to protect my daughter from being destroyed by association with scandal. Surely you understand that. Your daughter is a 28-year-old woman who's been protecting herself from your manipulation for years. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is about Naevia's well-being. You always were Richard's son. So cold, so quick to assume the worst. Corliss sipped her wine delicately. But you're right. Let's speak plainly. These photos are problematic. The speculation about your relationship with Naevia is problematic. The will's timing is problematic. If you want to maintain control of Vaughn Industries without the board questioning your judgment, we need to get ahead of this narrative. And how do you propose we do that? Distance. Publicly and definitively. You make a statement clarifying that Naevia's role is purely professional, fulfilling a requirement of Richard's will, nothing more. You're photographed with someone appropriate. There's a lovely young woman, Catherine Ashford, from an excellent family, who's been asking about you. A few public dates, some carefully placed engagement rumors, and the scandal dies down. Alaric stared at her. You want me to use another woman as cover to protect reputation while throwing Naevia under the bus? I want you to be smart. Richard built that company through strategic thinking, not emotional indulgence. If you have feelings for Naevia, and I'm not saying you do, but if you did, acting on them would destroy both of you. The board would question your fitness to lead. Society would tear Naevia apart as a gold digger who seduced her stepbrother. Your business rivals would use the scandal to undermine every deal you make. Is that what you want? What I want, Alaric said carefully, is for everyone to stop treating Naevia like a problem to be managed instead of a person with her own agency and value. Corliss's expression sharpened. She told you about Marcus Chun. The confirmation hit like a punch. You're admitting you had Richard interfere with your teenage daughter's relationship? I helped her avoid a mistake that would have limited her future. Marcus Chun was a sweet boy with no prospects. Naevia deserved better. She deserved to make her own choices. She was 16 and naive. I was protecting her from herself. Corliss leaned forward, voice dropping. Just like I'm trying to protect both of you now. You think you're different from Richard, Alaric? You think you're more evolved, more enlightened? You're not. You're a Vaughn. You wield power whether you want to or not, and everyone around you either benefits from that power or gets crushed by it. If you pursue this thing with Naevia, she will be crushed. Not by you intentionally, but by the systems and people who surround you. Is that what you want for someone you claim to care about? Alaric stood, throwing cash on the table. Stay away from Naevia. Whatever games you're playing, whatever schemes you're planning, leave her out of it. I don't need to play games, darling. The world will do the work for me. You'll see. He left the restaurant feeling sick, Corliss's words echoing in his head. The worst part was that she wasn't entirely wrong. The system that had elevated the Vaughn family to power did crush people who didn't fit the mold. He'd seen it happen countless times. Business rivals destroyed, whistleblowers silenced, anyone who threatened the empire neutralized. But Naevia wasn't a threat. She was the first honest thing in his life in longer than he could remember. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You need to see this. Meet me at the address below. Come alone. LH." The address was a coffee shop in Brooklyn, far from the usual Manhattan haunts. Alaric almost ignored it, but something about the message nagged at him. Lyndon Hale wouldn't use an unknown number, but the initials matched. He went. The coffee shop was half empty, late afternoon lull. Lyndon sat in the back corner, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the casual environment, his tailored suit incongruous among the arts students and freelancers. "This better be important," Alaric said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I'm not in the mood for cryptic games." Lyndon pushed a manila folder across the table. "You need to see what I found before I tell you what to do with it." Alaric opened the folder. Inside were financial records, email printouts, and what looked like private investigator reports. It took him a moment to understand what he was looking at, and when he did, cold rage flooded through him. "Corliss has been embezzling from the estate trust your father set up for Naevia." Lyndon nodded grimly. "Small amounts, hidden in administrative fees and legitimate expenses, but over the last 10 years it adds up to almost $2 million. She's also been using her position as executor of certain trusts to block Naevia's access to funds that should have been available to her years ago." "How did you find this?" "After the will reading, something bothered me about the way Corliss reacted to Naevia's clause. She wasn't surprised, she was angry. So I started digging into the estate management, and I found inconsistencies. I brought in a forensic accountant off the books, and this is what we uncovered." Alaric flipped through the documents. Each page, another betrayal. "Naevia doesn't know." "I don't think so. The way the accounts are structured, she'd have no reason to check. Corliss has been controlling the narrative, telling her the trusts are smaller than they are, that Richard didn't leave much for her, that she should be grateful for what little she got, while stealing from her own daughter, while positioning herself as the victim who married into wealth only to be sidelined by Richard's legitimate heir. She's been playing both sides, Alaric, using her connection to you to access wealth and social standing, while simultaneously setting Naevia up to be dependent on Corliss's goodwill." Alaric closed the folder carefully, mind racing. "Why bring this to me instead of Naevia directly?" "Because Naevia doesn't trust easily, and she especially doesn't trust anything connected to Vaughn Power. If I approach her with this, she'll assume it's manipulation, another attempt to control her. But if you tell her, if you give her the evidence and let her decide what to do with it, she might actually listen. Or she might think I'm trying to drive a wedge between her and her mother to make her more dependent on me. That's a risk. But it's also the truth, and she deserves to know it." Alaric took the folder, standing. "How many people know about this?" "Just me, the forensic accountant who's under an ironclad NDA, and now you. What you do with it is your call." "Thank you, Lyndon. I know this wasn't easy. Just don't make me regret it." "And Alaric? Those photos that leaked yesterday? I've been tracking the source. They came from a paparazzi agency that Corliss has used before for manufactured publicity. She's the one who set you up." "Of course she was." Alaric spent the cab ride back to Manhattan deciding how to tell Naevia. He couldn't just send the documents. Too impersonal, too easy to dismiss. He couldn't summon her to his office. Too much like wielding Vaughn Power. He needed neutral ground, somewhere she'd feel safe. He texted her. "We need to talk. Not about us. About your mother. I have information you need to see. Please." The response came 30 minutes later. "My apartment. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. This better not be a manipulation." Her apartment was in a converted warehouse in Williamsburg, the kind of space young professionals claimed when they wanted to be near Brooklyn's creative scene without fully committing to the gentrification. Alaric had never been inside before. Naevia guarded her privacy carefully, and when she opened the door, he understood why. The space was hers in a way nothing in the Vaughn estate had ever been. Warm colors, mismatched furniture that somehow worked together, walls covered in photographs and art from places she'd traveled. Books everywhere, stacked on shelves and tables and the floor. A small kitchen where coffee was already brewing. It looked like home in a way his penthouse never had. "You look surprised," Naevia said, closing the door behind him. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, no makeup, her natural hair in a messy bun. Casual in a way she never allowed herself to be in public. "I've never seen where you live. And you won't again after this, so don't get comfortable." But there was no real heat in her words, just wariness. "What's this information that couldn't wait?" Alaric set the folder on her coffee table. "Before you look at this, I need you to know that I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth, not because I want something from you. What you do with this information is entirely your choice." Naevia's expression shifted to concern. She sat down, opening the folder. Alaric watched her face as she read, saw the moment comprehension hit, the way her shoulders tensed, the way her breathing changed. She read everything twice, then looked up at him with eyes that held too many emotions to name. "My mother has been stealing from me for 10 years. Yes. She's been lying about the size of the trust Richard set up for me, making me think I had less than I did so I'd stay dependent on her goodwill. Yes. And she's the one who leaked those photos to the press to manufacture a scandal that would force you to distance yourself from me publicly." "We believe so, yes." Naevia set the papers down very carefully, like they might explode if handled roughly. When she spoke, her voice was eerily calm. "Get out. Naevia. Get out of my apartment, Alaric. Right now." He stood but didn't move toward the door. "Talk to me. Let me. Let you what? Comfort me? Fix this. Use your Vaughn power to destroy my mother and prove that you're the good guy here." She stood, and he saw tears streaming down her face even as her voice stayed controlled. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly why I said we couldn't do this. I'm not trying to control you. I'm giving you information. You're giving me ammunition. You're showing me that my mother is a monster, so I'll turn to you instead. So I'll see you as the savior. So I'll be grateful enough to ignore every reason this can't work. That's not what this is, isn't it?" Naevia grabbed the folder, shaking it. "You're a Vaughn, Alaric. This is what your family does. You find people's weaknesses and you exploit them. You find leverage and you use it. Richard did it to everyone around him his entire life, and you learned from the best." The accusation stung precisely because there was truth in it. "You're right. My father was a manipulative bastard who treated people like chess pieces. But I'm not him, and I'm trying very hard not to become him. I brought you this information because you have a right to know what's being done to you, not because I want to control you. But you do want to control me. You want me to stay, to give us a chance, to risk everything for the possibility of something that the entire world will use to destroy us both. And now you've shown me that I can't even trust my own mother. So where does that leave me? Who can I trust, Alaric? Tell me." The question hung in the air between them, raw and desperate. Alaric wanted to say, "Trust me," but the words stuck in his throat. How could he ask that when everything she was saying was valid? When the Vaughn name came with generations of manipulation and control. When loving him meant entering a world that would judge and dissect every choice she made. "I don't know," he said finally. "I don't know who you can trust, because trust is earned and I haven't earned yours. But I'm trying. I'm trying to be different from my father, to use the power I inherited for something other than domination and control. And I'm asking, not demanding, asking, that you consider the possibility that maybe not everyone with power is corrupt, and maybe not every difficult choice is manipulation." Naevia sank back onto the couch, face in her hands. "I need you to leave. I need to process this alone, and I can't do that with you here looking at me like I'm something fragile that needs protecting. You're not fragile. You're the strongest person I know. Then respect my strength enough to give me space." Alaric moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "Whatever you decide to do about your mother, about the money, about us, I'll support it. Even if that means walking away completely and never speaking to you again. Your agency matters more to me than my feelings." He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. The next 72 hours were the longest of Alaric's life. He heard nothing from Naevia. No calls, no texts, no emails. He forced himself not to reach out, to give her the space she'd asked for, even as every instinct screamed to check on her. The media frenzy continued. More photos appeared, older ones dug up from family events, angles analyzed, body language dissected. The narrative was building: forbidden romance, scandal, inappropriate relationship. Catherine Ashford's name started appearing in gossip columns next to his, sources claiming they were dating, that he was trying to move on from his complicated situation with his stepsister. The board called an emergency meeting. Alaric sat at the head of the conference table, facing 12 men and women who'd built careers on Vaughn Industries' success and had no interest in watching reputation crumble over a scandal. Thomas Westbrook, the longest-serving board member and his father's oldest friend, led the attack. Alaric, we need to address the elephant in the room. These rumors about you and Richard's stepdaughter are damaging the company's image. Investors are asking questions. Partners are expressing concern. We need a clear strategy to contain this. The rumors are speculation based on telephoto photos of a business meeting, Alaric said calmly. There's nothing to contain. The optics are terrible, Catherine Merrill, the board's newest member, interjected. Whether or not anything inappropriate is happening, the appearance of impropriety is enough to damage credibility. You need to distance yourself from Ms. Brooks publicly and definitively. Ms. Brooks is involved with this company because my father's will requires it. I'm not going to throw her under the bus to protect reputation. No one's asking you to throw her under the bus, Thomas said carefully. We're asking you to be strategic. Make a statement clarifying the professional nature of your relationship. Be photographed with someone appropriate. Show the world that you're in control of the narrative. The world, Alaric said quietly, can believe whatever it wants. I'm not going to live my life performing for public opinion. The room went very still. Alaric, Thomas said, voice dropping into warning territory. Your father built this company through careful reputation management and strategic relationships. If you're unwilling to do the same, then what? You'll remove me as CEO? Call a vote of no confidence. Alaric stood, placing both hands on the table. Let me be very clear. I am Richard Vaughn's son, and I inherited controlling interest in this company. You serve at my pleasure, not the other way around. If you think my personal life disqualifies me from leadership, you're welcome to tender your resignations. Otherwise, I suggest we focus on actual business instead of gossip column fodder. He walked out before anyone could respond, adrenaline surging. He'd never challenged the board that directly, never pulled rank like some entitled heir. But he was done performing, done pretending, done living under the weight of his father's legacy. His phone rang as he reached his office. Unknown number. Alaric Vaughn. It's me. Naevia's voice, quiet and strained. I need to see you. Not at your office, not at my apartment. Somewhere neutral. Where? The park. The one near the estate where we used to walk when we needed to escape family dinners. Can you meet me there in an hour? I'll be there. The park was nearly empty on a Wednesday afternoon, just a few runners and dog walkers sharing the paths. Alaric found Naevia sitting on a bench overlooking the pond where they'd once fed ducks as teenagers, trying to avoid awkward step-sibling bonding forced on them by their parents. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. He sat beside her, maintaining careful distance. I confronted her, Naevia said without preamble. Corliss. I showed her the evidence, and you know what she said. Alaric waited. She said I should be grateful. That she spent that money supporting the lifestyle that allowed me to access opportunities one never would have had otherwise. That I owe her for marrying Richard and giving me the Vaughn name, even if just as a stepdaughter. That she did what any smart woman would do, secured her future and mine. What did you say? I told her she was a thief and a liar, and that I never wanted to see her again. Naevia's voice broke slightly. She's my mother, Alaric. She's the woman who raised me, who taught me to read, who held me when I had nightmares. And she's been using me as an investment strategy for 10 years. I'm sorry. I don't want your apology. I want. She trailed off, staring at the pond. I don't know what I want anymore. I thought I had everything figured out. Keep my distance from Vaughn money, build my own life, maintain independence, never let anyone have power over me. And now I find out I've been powerless this whole time, that my own mother was controlling me in ways I never even suspected. You're not powerless. You never were. Weren't I? I let her convince me the trusts were small. I let her manage my finances because I didn't want to deal with Vaughn lawyers and accountants. I trusted her, and that trust made me vulnerable. Trust isn't weakness, Naevia. Being betrayed doesn't mean you were wrong to trust. It means she was wrong to violate that trust. She finally looked at him, eyes searching his face. How do I know you won't do the same thing? How do I know that 6 months from now, a year from now, you won't use whatever I've given you against me? You don't. That's the risk of trusting anyone. That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to be honest. Alaric shifted to face her fully. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I can't promise that my world won't complicate your life or that people won't judge you for being associated with me. I can't promise that loving me won't cost you things you value. But I can promise that I will never deliberately betray you, never use information against you, never treat you as anything less than an equal partner with full agency over your own choices. That's a pretty speech. It's the truth. And if you don't believe me, then walk away. Fulfill the terms of the will from a distance, minimize contact, and in 6 months you'll be free to build whatever life you want without me in it. I'll support that choice completely. Naevia was quiet for a long moment, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the pond in a neat line. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. When I was 8 years old, before Corliss married Richard, we lived in a studio apartment in Queens. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, barely enough space for both of us. Corliss worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent half the time. I remember her crying at the kitchen table, looking at bills she couldn't pay, and I felt so helpless. So when she met Richard, when she started talking about security and opportunity and a better life, I understood why she did what she did. I understood the seduction. She turned to look at him, and Alaric saw something raw in her expression. But I also promised myself I would never be that desperate. Never be so afraid of poverty that I'd compromise my integrity or use people for financial security. I built my entire adult life around that promise. And now I find out that while I was busy being morally superior, my mother was stealing from me and I didn't even notice. What does that say about me? It says you're not cynical enough to assume everyone around you is corrupt. That's not a failing, Naevia. That's proof you're better than the world that raised you. Or proof I'm naive. You're not naive. You're principled. There's a difference. Naevia stood, pacing along the pond's edge. The board wants you to distance yourself from me. Corliss told me that too, during our fight. She said she was actually trying to protect me from the scandal of being associated with you romantically, that she leaked those photos to force the issue into the open so we'd be pressured to deny everything and move on. Do you believe her? I believe she's capable of convincing herself that her manipulations are protection. I believe she spent so long justifying her choices that she can't tell the difference between selfishness and sacrifice anymore. Naevia stopped pacing, facing him. And I believe that if we pursue this thing between us, she'll use it against both of us in every way she can think of. Probably. The media will crucify us. Society will treat us like a scandal. Your business rivals will use it to undermine every deal you make. And I'll spend the rest of my life being known as the stepsister who seduced the billionaire heir, regardless of the truth. Yes. So why are you still here? Why aren't you doing what the board wants, what Corliss wants, what common sense dictates? Why aren't you protecting yourself? Alaric stood, closing the distance between them until they were close enough to touch, but he kept his hands at his sides. Because I spent 32 years being the person everyone expected me to be, and I'm tired of it. Because I've dated appropriate women and felt nothing. Because I've built a fortune and an empire and discovered none of it matters if I'm fundamentally alone. And because you're the only person in my life who looks at me and sees a human being instead of a bank account or a business opportunity or a legacy to be preserved. That's not enough. Wanting something isn't enough to make it work. I know, but maybe it's enough to try. Naevia's eyes filled with tears. You're asking me to gamble everything on maybe. I'm asking you to consider that maybe the life you've been building in isolation, the walls you've constructed to keep yourself safe, might be a prison as much as protection. I'm asking if you're willing to risk being hurt again for the possibility of something real. And if it destroys us both, then at least we'll have tried. At least we'll know we didn't spend our lives wondering what if. She reached up and touched his face, fingers gentle against his jaw. Alaric held very still, afraid to move and break whatever fragile thing was happening. I'm terrified, she whispered. Me too. I don't trust easily, and when I do trust, I hold grudges when that trust is broken. I know. I won't be grateful and compliant. I'll question everything. I'll fight you when I think you're wrong. I'll demand equal partnership, not some billionaire rescue struggling woman dynamic. I wouldn't want it any other way. And if your world tries to diminish me or treat me like an accessory, I will walk away without looking back. I would expect nothing less. Naevia laughed, a sound somewhere between hope and despair. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Probably. We should be smart about this. Strategic. We should wait until the media frenzy dies down, until the will terms are fulfilled, until we're not under so much scrutiny. We could do that. But we're not going to, are we? Not if you don't want to. She kissed him then, sudden and fierce, her hands fisting in his shirt. Alaric wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, something in his chest loosened. Something that had been tight and controlled his entire life finally relaxed. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Naevia rested her forehead against his. I'm still angry about the photos. About Corliss. About all of it. You should be. And I'm still scared this will end badly. That's reasonable. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. Alaric kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again, gentle this time. So what do we do? Naevia pulled back slightly, and he saw determination settling into her features. We do this on our terms. Not hiding, not performing for public consumption, but also not feeding the media frenzy. We focus on fulfilling the will requirements professionally while we figure out what this is personally. And if anyone, Corliss, the board, the media, anyone, tries to use our relationship as a weapon, we handle it together. Together. I like that word. Don't get used to it too quickly. I'm still figuring out if I like you most of the time. Fair enough. They walked back through the park hand in hand, and Alaric felt something shift in the universe. It was a small gesture, public and deliberate, and he knew someone would photograph it. Someone would turn it into a headline. Someone would use it as ammunition. He found he didn't care. But the next morning brought consequences anyway. Alaric arrived at his office to find Lyndon waiting, expression grim. We have a problem. Corliss held a press conference an hour ago. Cold dread settled in Alaric's stomach. Show me. The video was already trending. Corliss, perfectly styled and tearful, sitting in some interview setting, talking to a sympathetic journalist about her concerns for her daughter. I'm speaking out because I'm a mother who's terrified for her child, Corliss said, dabbing at her eyes. Naevia is a beautiful, intelligent young woman who's been put in an impossible position by my late husband's will. She's required to work closely with Alaric Vaughn, a man with tremendous power and influence, and I'm watching their relationship cross lines that make me deeply uncomfortable. Are you suggesting something inappropriate is happening? The journalist asked. I'm suggesting that power imbalances create situations where consent becomes complicated. Naevia has been estranged from her family, struggling financially, trying to build a non-profit on limited resources. And now suddenly she's spending time with a billionaire who controls access to money she may desperately need. As her mother, I have to ask, is she truly free to say no? Or is she being coerced through financial pressure and emotional manipulation? Alaric felt rage building, white-hot, and controlled. Corliss was rewriting the narrative, painting herself as a concerned mother and Naevia as a victim, all while positioning Alaric as a predator using his power to exploit a vulnerable woman. There's more, Lyndon said, fast-forwarding. She's calling for an investigation into whether the will's terms constitute undue influence, and she's suggesting that Naevia should be removed from any involvement with Vaughn Industries for her own protection. She's trying to isolate Naevia completely, cut her off from the company, from the money, from any power base that doesn't run through Corliss herself. And she's doing it publicly, which means fighting back makes you look defensive and guilty. It's a perfect trap. Alaric's phone rang. Naevia, tell me you didn't watch Corliss's press conference, she said without preamble. I watched it. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to actually kill her. Get in line. Naevia laughed, but there was no humor in it. She's positioning herself as my protector while simultaneously destroying any credibility I have. If I defend our relationship, I look like I'm being manipulated. If I stay silent, the narrative stands unchallenged. Either way, she wins. Not necessarily. We could. No. No more we could. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Alaric. Your world swallowing me whole, turning me into a story instead of a person. I can't fight Corliss and the media and public opinion while also trying to figure out what's real between us. What are you saying? There was a long pause. When Naevia spoke again, her voice was eerily calm. I'm saying I need to remove myself from the equation. I'm going to make a statement declining any further involvement with Vaughn Industries beyond what's legally required to fulfill the will's minimum terms. I'm going to distance myself publicly from you, from the company, from all of it. And I'm going to rebuild my life on my own terms, without Vaughn money or influence or complications. Naevia, no. This isn't a discussion, Alaric. This is me choosing myself before I get destroyed by association. I told you I'd walk away if your world tried to diminish me, and that's exactly what's happening. We can fight this. Together. I can't fight a war on multiple fronts while also trying to trust someone for the first time in years. I just can't. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Alaric stood frozen, Lyndon watching him with concern. What do you need? Lyndon asked quietly. What he needed was to fix this, to protect Naevia, to destroy Corliss and everyone else threatening the one real thing in his life. He needed to use every resource at his disposal to control the narrative and win. But that was exactly what Naevia was afraid of. That was exactly what made him his father's son. I need, Alaric said slowly, to figure out how to love someone without trying to save them. That's above my pay grade, boss. Mine too. The next 24 hours were chaos. Naevia released a brief statement through a lawyer, declining further involvement with Vaughn Industries and requesting privacy. Corliss did 3 more interviews, each one more performative than the last. The board called another emergency meeting. The media circus intensified, and Alaric made a decision. He called a press conference of his own. It was held in the lobby of Vaughn Industries headquarters, cameras and reporters packed into the space. Questions shouted before he even reached the microphone. He'd refused to tell his PR team what he planned to say, knowing they'd try to stop him. This needed to be honest, not strategic. I'm going to make a statement, and I won't be taking questions afterward, Alaric said, voice carrying over the crowd. There's been significant speculation about my relationship with Naevia Brooks, and about the terms of my father's will. I'm here to clarify some things. The room quieted, cameras focusing. Naevia Brooks is one of the most intelligent, capable, and principled people I've ever known. She's been portrayed in the media as either a victim or a seductress, neither of which is accurate or fair. She's a woman who built a successful nonprofit from nothing, who's worked tirelessly to create opportunities for underserved communities, who's never asked for or accepted charity from anyone. The suggestion that she's somehow being coerced or manipulated is an insult to her agency and intelligence. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. My father's will included terms that required Ms. Brooks' involvement with company business for a specified period. Those terms were my father's choice, not mine or hers. We've both been trying to fulfill those requirements professionally while dealing with media scrutiny that would test anyone's patience. The speculation about our personal relationship has crossed lines of decency and privacy. Another pause. This was the moment. The choice between protection and truth. That said, I'm not going to stand here and lie. I have feelings for Naevia Brooks that go beyond professional respect. Those feelings developed despite our complicated family connection, not because of it. We've both struggled with what that means, how to navigate it ethically, whether pursuing it is even possible given the scrutiny and judgment that would follow. These are questions we're still figuring out, and we deserve the space to figure them out without constant media interference. The reporters erupted with questions, but Alaric continued over them. What I will not tolerate is my stepmother using concern for her daughter as cover for what appears to be a calculated attempt to control both Naevia's access to resources and the narrative around our relationship. I've recently discovered evidence that Corliss Brooks has been embezzling from trusts established for Naevia's benefit, and I've turned that evidence over to appropriate authorities. If she wants to position herself as a protective mother, she can start by returning the money she stole from her daughter. The room exploded. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted over each other. Alaric walked away from the microphone, ignoring the chaos, and returned to his office. His phone was ringing before he even sat down. Naevia, what the hell did you just do? She sounded somewhere between furious and disbelieving. I told the truth. You just declared war on my mother in front of every news outlet in New York. She declared war on both of us first. I'm just evening the odds. By making this personal? By dragging family drama into public view? By admitting you have feelings for me on camera where millions of people can dissect every word? Yes. Naevia was quiet for a moment. You're insane. You know that. You're absolutely insane. Probably. But I'm tired of playing games, Naevia. I'm tired of strategies and optics and carefully managed narratives. I'm tired of pretending I don't care about you to protect reputation. So I told the truth, and now whatever happens, happens. You just made me part of a media story I specifically said I didn't want to be part of. I know. And if you hate me for it, I'll understand. But I wasn't going to let Corliss paint you as a victim or manipulate public opinion unopposed. You deserve better than that. Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, Naevia laughed. You're such an idiot. Is that a term of endearment? It's an observation. You just gave up any pretense of controlling the narrative in favor of messy honesty. That's the most un-Vaughn thing I've ever seen you do. I'm trying to be different from my father. How am I doing? Terribly. Richard would never have done something so emotionally reckless. She paused. I can't believe you told the world you have feelings for me. Would you have preferred I lied? I would have preferred you consulted me before making a unilateral decision that affects both our lives. You're right. I'm sorry. I should have talked to you first. Yes, you should have. But her voice had softened slightly. What happens now? I honestly don't know. Corliss will probably sue. The board might actually try to remove me. The media will pick apart every word I said. And we'll have to figure out if what we feel for each other can survive all of that. That's not exactly a fairy tale ending. No, but it's honest. Naevia sighed. I'm coming to your office. We need to talk about this properly, face to face. And Alaric? Next time you decide to blow up both our lives on live television, give me a heads up first. Deal. She arrived 40 minutes later, walking through the Vaughn Industries lobby past cameras and reporters who'd stationed themselves outside. Security kept them back, but their shouted questions followed her all the way to the elevators. When she walked into Alaric's office, she looked exhausted but determined. The media is calling this the scandal of the decade, she said without preamble. There are think pieces about step-sibling relationships, power dynamics, and whether you're fit to run a company. Twitter is having a field day, and my phone won't stop ringing with interview requests. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and tell me what your end game is here. Because from where I'm standing, you just sacrificed your reputation and possibly your company for what? The principle of honesty? The right to have feelings? What was worth this? Alaric stood, moving to face her. You are. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. I watched my father spend 40 years building an empire through calculated moves and strategic relationships, and he died alone and unhappy. I don't want that life. I don't want to be 80 years old looking back and realizing I never took a single real risk, never let anyone close enough to actually know me, never chose what I wanted over what was expected. So yes, I sacrificed reputation and possibly the company, because the alternative was sacrificing any chance at something real with you. Naevia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You don't even know if we'll work. We've never been on an actual date. We've never had a normal conversation that wasn't weighted down by family drama, oral terms, or media scrutiny. You're gambling everything on a possibility. I know. That's incredibly stupid. Also probably true. She moved closer, and Alaric could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear versus hope, self-protection versus risk, all the walls she'd built versus the chance to let them down. If we do this, she said quietly, if we actually try this thing between us, I need you to understand something. I will not be grateful. I will not owe you anything. I will not spend my life proving I'm good enough to be with a Vaughn. We're equals, or we're nothing. Equals. Yes. And if I decide it's not working, if I decide the cost is too high or that I'm happier alone, you let me go without a fight. No using your resources to change my mind. No grand gestures designed to overwhelm my objections. You respect my choice. I will. I promise. And we do this in our own time, on our own terms. No performing for the media, no engagement announcements designed to control the narrative. We figure out what this is privately before we decide how public to be about it. Agreed. Naevia took a deep breath. Okay. I'm willing to try. Against my better judgment, against all common sense, against every instinct telling me to protect myself, I'm willing to try. Alaric felt something enormous shift in his chest, like tectonic plates moving into new alignment. You won't regret this. I might, but I guess we'll find out together. He kissed her then, gentle and honest, and Naevia kissed him back with an intensity that suggested she'd been holding herself back for far too long. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. We're going to have to deal with Corliss. With the board. With every person who thinks this is inappropriate or wrong or scandalous. I know. It's going to be brutal. Probably. But maybe, Naevia said softly, maybe it's worth it anyway. Maybe it is. The next 6 months were exactly as brutal as predicted. Corliss fought the embezzlement charges, hiring expensive lawyers and continuing her media campaign, painting herself as a victim. The board did call a vote of no confidence, which Alaric survived by a narrow margin after presenting a comprehensive plan for company restructuring that prioritized ethics over pure profit. The media coverage was relentless. Every date, every public appearance, every business decision was analyzed through the lens of the step-sibling scandal. Think pieces debated the ethics of their relationship. Social media divided into camps of support and condemnation. But slowly, something unexpected happened. Naevia's nonprofit got attention from the coverage, and donations increased dramatically. Her work with underserved communities became a counter-narrative to the scandal storyline. Here was a woman who'd built something meaningful independent of Vaughn money, who was changing lives, who clearly wasn't just a gold digger or victim. Alaric's restructuring plan actually worked. Vaughn Industries began focusing on sustainable practices and ethical partnerships, and while some board members resigned in protest, new ones joined who valued the direction. Profits dipped initially, then stabilized, then grew. And most importantly, they learned each other. Real dates in quiet restaurants where they argued about politics and laughed about stupid things and discovered they disagreed on films but loved the same books. Long conversations about childhood trauma and adult fears and the work of becoming people who weren't defined by their parents' choices. Fights that felt terrifying in their intensity but productive in their honesty. Learning to trust again, slowly, with setbacks and breakthroughs and the messy reality of two damaged people trying to build something together. 1 year after the blackout that started everything, Alaric and Naevia stood in his office. Their office now, since she'd officially joined Vaughn Industries in a consulting role focused on social responsibility initiatives, reviewing the latest quarterly reports. "We're actually doing it," Naevia said, looking at the numbers. "Profit up, positive press coverage of our community partnerships, employee satisfaction at a 10-year high. You're successfully not being your father." "We're successfully not being our parents," Alaric corrected. "This is both of us." She smiled, and Alaric still felt his heart skip when she did that. Some things never got old. "Corliss settled the embezzlement case," Naevia said, closing her laptop. "Her lawyers called this morning. She's returning 80% of what she took, plus agreeing to stay out of my life permanently." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved. Sad. Angry. Grateful it's over." She shrugged. "All of it at once. Complicated. Complicated is honest. It's something we're good at." Alaric moved to where she stood, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I love you. Have I mentioned that today? 3 times. But I don't mind hearing it again. I love you. Thank you for taking the risk." Naevia turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. "Thank you for being worth it." They kissed, and somewhere 42 stories below, New York City continued its relentless chaos, indifferent to their happiness or struggles or the quiet revolution they'd built together. The media still talked about them occasionally. Society still had opinions. There were still people who thought their relationship was wrong or scandalous or inappropriate. But they'd learned something that Richard Vaughn never understood and Corliss Brooks never valued. Some things were worth more than reputation, more than public approval, more than the empire you inherited. Some things were worth risking everything for. Not because the risk guaranteed success, but because the alternative, safety through isolation, power through control, wealth without connection, wasn't really living at all. 2 years later, they were married in a small ceremony that deliberately excluded media, society figures, and anyone who'd ever questioned their right to love each other. Just friends they'd chosen, colleagues who'd supported them, and the life they'd built brick by brick from the ruins of the lives they'd been expected to lead. Naevia wore a dress she'd chosen herself, not designer, but beautiful. Alaric cried during the vows, not caring who saw. They promised each other honesty, equality, and the courage to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Naevia leaned close and whispered, "Still think gambling on possibilities was stupid?" "Absolutely," Alaric whispered back. "Best stupid decision I ever made." They walked out into their future together, equals in every sense that mattered. Proof that sometimes the most scandalous thing you can do is refuse to live by rules that were never designed for your happiness anyway. The empire didn't crumble. The world didn't end. Love didn't solve every problem or erase every difficulty. But it was real, and it was theirs, and that was enough. If this story of choosing love over legacy, truth over reputation, and yourself over expectations resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories about people who dared to rewrite the rules. Drop a comment telling us what you would have done in Naevia's position. Would you have taken the risk or walked away? And smash that like button if you believe some gambles are worth taking. Your engagement helps us keep telling stories about the courage it takes to choose happiness over approval. Thank you for watching their journey.